Welcome back. In this video, I will be reading the story Swamp Angel. Your job is to activate prior knowledge and identify characteristics of a tall tale. Before I start the story, I want to tell you a little bit about the author Anne Isaacs. Anne Isaacs was born in Buffalo, New York, and lived there until she left for college in 1967. Since then, she has lived in various cities in Canada and in the San Francisco Bay Area, where she lives now. As a child, she was shy and usually lost in a world of imagination. She read constantly from fourth grade on and dabbled in writing. But she didn't begin to write seriously until she had children of her own. When not writing, Isaacs can be found hiking with friends, swimming, cooking, or spending time with her 3 children. Her advice to people who want to be writers is to listen and read. She tells them that the more you play with words, the better. Budding writers can share their stories or poems with friends and listen to what they say. Above all, she tells them, do not give up. I want to review what a tall tale is. Tall tales are American folk tales told early in United States history. When the first settlers began moving west, they found themselves faced with seemingly impossible tasks. The huge job of clearing the land to build homes, cities, and railroads gave the workers a chance to invent stories about their surroundings and the larger-than-life people who felt that nothing was impossible. Some of these legendary heroes were real people. As more people told the stories, they grew and grew and grew until the real live people were no longer human, but fictitious super beings. For this reason, these stories are called tall tales. Now, if you get out your flip book, I want to go over all of the elements of a tall tale before we begin reading. So, our first one, the T, wrong way. Main character is larger than life or superhuman. The A, details are exaggerated beyond belief. Problems are often solved in humorous ways. And characters use everyday language and are common people in behavior. Okay. So make sure to keep this close by while I'm reading so you can try to find clues in the book that would make it a tall tale. Lastly, there are some vocabulary words I want to quickly go over. The story takes place a long time ago, so some of these words might be unfamiliar. The first word that we will probably come across is bog. A bog is a small swamp. Our next word is mired, and that means stuck in the mud. Third vocabulary word is covered wagon. So a covered wagon is a large wagon with a canvas cover that settlers traveled in across the country. You may have seen these before. They kind of remind me of a buggy. Root cellar. A root cellar is an underground room used to store food in. Settler. A settler is a person who traveled across the country in the 1800s to make a home in a new area. Molasses. You might know this one. You might put it on your pancakes or waffles. Molasses is a dark, sweet, sticky syrup. Our next vocabulary word is commenced. Commenced means to begin or start. And then the last one is a lasso, and you might have seen a lasso in cowboy movies. It's a rope with a loop at the end used to catch a cow or a horse. So if you need to rewind the video to hear those vocabulary words and what they mean during the story, feel free to do that. I'm going to turn the camera around so that way you can see the illustrations that Paul O. Zelinsky did in our book, and you can follow along with me while I read. Swamp Angel by Anne Isaacs. illustrated by Paul O. Zelinsky. I want you to take a look at this cover. Okay, I see a girl. Oh, I also see a medal here. Caldecott Honor Book. We'll talk about that after we read the story. Look how large this girl is. I see a man, a woman. There's a bear in the background here by the mountains. Try to zoom in so you can see the pictures and the words. On August 1st, 1815, when Angelica Longrider took her first gulp of air on this earth, there was nothing about the baby to suggest that she would become the greatest woodswoman in Tennessee. The newborn was scarcely taller than her mother and couldn't climb a tree without help. Although her father gave her a shiny new axe to play with in the cradle, like any good Tennessee father would, she was a full 2 years old before she built her first log cabin. But by the time she was full grown, she was second to none in buckskin bravery, performing eye-popping wonders in the bogs and backwoods of Tennessee. I'm not sure if you can see this whole illustration, but it looks like somebody's house was on fire, and she used her apron to scoop up water and then put out the fire. And you can see too in the pictures how large she is compared to her parents. When she was 12, a wagon train got mired in Dejection Swamp. The settlers had abandoned their covered wagons and nearly all hope besides. Suddenly, a young woman in a homespun dress tramped toward them out of the mist. She lifted those wagons like they were twigs in a puddle and set them on high ground. "It's an angel!" cried the gape-mouthed pioneers. Ever since that time, Angelica Longrider has been known as Swamp Angel. To this day, stories about Swamp Angel spring up like sunflowers along the wagon trails, and every one of them is true. Once upon a summer in the Tennessee wilderness, there prowled a huge bear with a bottomless appetite for settlers' grub. Why, that varmint would rip the door off a food cellar and gobble up the whole winter's rations without waiting for a napkin. He came to be known as Thundering Tarnation, because those were the words most commonly heard when he was spotted in the neighborhood. Many tried, but none could catch that low-down pile of pelts. He was fast and wily, and his fur so thick the gunshot never reached his skin. Before long, Thundering Tarnation had cleaned out half the root cellars in Tennessee. The settlers were desperate with no food to get them through the long winter ahead. So they sent word across the land of a competition to kill that bear. The reward for the successful hunter was to be Tarnation's enormous pelt, equal to a whole year's hunting and worth a lot more on account of his fame. Beyond that, the winner could earn a powerful reputation and the title of Champion Wildcat. So it sounds like they're going to have a contest to see who can kill this bear that's eating everybody's food. Now it's well known, and a fact too, that Tennessee daredevils are as plentiful as dewdrops on corn. Pretty soon, there was a long line of men in coonskin caps waiting to sign up for the hunt. But when Swamp Angel stepped in line, one of those buckskins called out, "Hey, Angel, shouldn't you be home mending a quilt?" Says she, "Quilting is men's work." "Well, how about baking a pie, Angel?" "I aim to," she says. "A bear pie." Their hoots and taunts didn't stop Swamp Angel from signing up and setting out to find that bear. Tarnation left a pretty clear trail. The first hunter was found wearing an empty molasses bucket, a silly grin on his face. Seems he tried the sweet approach and got licked in more ways than one. It took 10 strong men to rescue the next hunter from his own bear trap. A third set out with a hardened hickory club and then ended up waist deep in toothpicks. Another was discovered wandering in circles, clutching 2 fistfuls of fur. His head was completely bald, his beard mighty scarce. Seems he traded pelts with Thundering Tarnation and got the worst of the bargain. Soon, Swamp Angel was the only one left who hadn't met up with Tarnation. Until one morning she awoke from dozing in the shade of a creek to find that 4-legged forest of stubble staring at her across the stream. They faced off for a few minutes. "Varmint," says Angel, "I'm much obliged for that pelt you're carrying." "Rrrr," says Tarnation. Then they waded into the stream and commenced to fight. If you remember, commenced was one of our vocabulary words. They waded into the stream and commenced to fight, meaning they began or started to fight. She looks ready, but so does Tarnation. Swamp Angel took hold of that bear and tossed him so high he was still on the way up at nightfall. Even when the first star came out, there was no sign of him. Angel began to think she had lost him in the sky. Now, Angel was bound and determined to get Tarnation's pelt. Just at that moment, a tornado whirled by with a spout clear up to the clouds. Swamp Angel grabbed hold of it and swung the twister around like a giant lasso in the heavens. She roped that bristled bandit and brought him crashing back to the earth. So I want you to pause here and tell somebody nearby, why, when she threw him up into the sky and he was gone, why did she bring Tarnation the bear back down to earth? She grabbed that tornado and lassoed him out of the sky back down to earth. If you remember from the text, it says that she was bound and determined to get Tarnation's pelt, meaning she wants to get the fur. Locked in a bear hug, Swamp Angel and Thundering Tarnation wrestled across the hills of Tennessee. They stirred up so much dust that those hills are still called the Great Smoky Mountains. They fought 3 days and 3 nights without a break. On the 4th day, they wrestled their way into a lake 50 feet deep. Tarnation pinned Angel to the muddy bottom with one of his gigantic paws. Some of you may have driven through the Great Smoky Mountains before, maybe on a road trip. And there they are at the bottom. Tarnation has Angel pinned down with his paw. To get a breath of air, she had to drink the whole lake dry. That was mighty refreshing, says Angel. But it didn't look good for Angel. Down in the muck under that mountain of mange, no matter how she struggled, she could not free herself from Tarnation's paw. Then Angel had an idea. She opened her tobacco pouch and emptied it onto the end of Tarnation's nose. He sniffed, threw back his head, and sneezed so hard the mud flew off the lake bottom and Angel with it. Achoo! She hiked back 10 miles from where she had landed, and the fight commenced once more. Swamp Angel and Tarnation finally grew so tired they fell asleep, but that didn't stop them. They wrestled in their sleep. Tarnation snored louder than a rock slide, while Angel snored like a locomotive in a thunderstorm. Their snoring rumbled through the earth, tumbling boulders and shaking trees loose. By morning, they had snored down nearly the whole forest. The second biggest pine tree in Tennessee landed smack beside them. At the top of that tree was a beehive the size of a hill, oozing rivers of honey. After 5 days without food, Tarnation couldn't resist. He rolled over in his sleep and sank his jaws into the sweet, syrupy torrent. As he guzzled and slurped, Swamp Angel snored down one last tree. It fell right on top of Thundering Tarnation. That bear was dead as a stump and considerably flatter. When Angel awoke and saw what had happened, she plucked off her hat, bowed her head, and offered up these words of praise. "Confound it, varmint! If you weren't the most wondrous heap of trouble I ever come to grips with." That night, Tarnation fed everyone in Tennessee. I can tell you. It was the biggest celebration the state had ever known. There were bear steaks and bear cakes, bear muffins and bear stuffing, bear roast and bear toast. To wash it all down, there was berry wine. You could hear waistcoat buttons popping as far away as Kentucky. The leftovers filled all the empty storehouses in Tennessee just before the first snowfall. Swamp Angel decided to keep Thundering Tarnation's pelt as a rug. It was too big for Tennessee, So she moved to Montana and spread that bear rug out on the ground in front of her cabin. Nowadays, folks call it the short grass prairie. Now, you may think no one was ever seen of thundering tarnation, but that is not the case. Back when Angel threw him up in the sky, he crashed into a pile of stars, making a lasting impression. You can still see him there, any clear night. The end. I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I did. If we look at the cover, we notice that there was a medal, a silver medal on the front, and it says it is a Caldecott Honor Book. The Caldecott Medal was named in honor of 19th century English illustrator Randolph Caldecott. It is awarded annually by the Association for Library Service to Children to the artists of the most distinguished American picture book for children. So, Paul O. Zelinsky won the Caldecott Medal in 1995. Pretty cool. Now I want you to take your flip book, and I want to review our elements to try to see if there were any clues in Swamp Angel that made us think that it was a tall tale. So our first element was the main character is larger than life or superhuman. Now, I want you to comment below or tell somebody that you're with. Did we have a main character that was larger than life or have some special abilities, kind of giant? I'll go ahead and flip back and show you some pictures. Yes, if you said our main character, Swamp Angel, was larger than life, you are correct. She's big, even on the back, her parents holding her when she was little. You can see just how large she is. She drank an entire lake. So I would say that yes, she is superhuman. So we can check off, yes, this story has one element of a tall tale. Let's see if it has any more. Second one, details are exaggerated beyond belief. Now, we just talked about how she's larger than life, so I think that is already a pretty big exaggeration. You can see how big her feet are over here. It said that she lassoed a tornado. I don't think anybody can really lasso a tornado, so that seems like an exaggeration to me. We talked about how she drank the whole lake, and she said that was mighty refreshing. Even how her Ann Tarnation snored so loud that it knocked down all the trees in the forest. So I would say that we could check off the first two elements. It had the main character that was larger than life, and it had some exaggeration. The third element, problems are often solved in humorous ways. So we're going to stop here, and I want you to comment below or tell somebody that you're with, what was the problem in the story? Okay, think back to the beginning. The problem. What was Swamp Angel trying to fix? Now, if we go back in the story, I read that Tarnation was eating all of the food that people had saved up for winter, and he kept sneaking into their root cellars and neighborhoods, and he was eating everything. He would rip the door off a food cellar and gobble up the whole winter's rations. Then on the very next page, they are signing up for a contest to see who can kill Tarnation because he's just taking everybody's food. So, that was our problem, but the element says problems are often solved in humorous ways. So we know what the problem is, but how was it solved? How did Swamp Angel solve this problem? I know that she set out, just like all the other men, to try to hunt Tarnation, and they wrestled together for days on end. But what finally happened? What happened to Tarnation, and what finally killed him in the end? Remember, they were sleeping. They were fighting so long that they got so sleepy, and they were snoring. The whole forest fell down. And then Angel's snoring was so loud, it knocked down the very last tree in the forest, and it fell right on top of Tarnation. So I think that's a pretty funny way how the story was solved. I didn't think it was going to end that way, but it made me laugh that she just snored so loud. I thought that she was going to, I don't know, wrestle him to death, but it was actually just her sleeping that did it. So I would say so far that we have check, check, and check. Let's see if Swamp Angel has the last element of a tall tale. It is characters use everyday language and are common people in behavior. So think about Swamp Angel. Was she just like everybody else? She had a family, a home, she did work, she talked like us. Yeah, she said some funny things or had some funny sayings, but I think most people do. She signed up for a contest just like everybody else. She helped save people and put out fires. She built a log cabin. Okay, so it sounds like she's pretty hardworking, and that she is pretty average, just like our families. So after checking off all of our flaps, what do you think? Was Swamp Angel a tall tale? It was. I enjoy reading tall tales. In the last video I mentioned that you should check out Epic or YouTube to read stories about Paul Bunyan or Johnny Appleseed. So I encourage you to do that because they are funny, and you might see some similarities between Swamp Angel and the other stories. And make sure to use your flip book to check off the elements to double check to make sure it is a tall tale. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll have one left in this series where we'll be doing some other activities, and I'll teach you a game. Have a good day.